Hello, everyone. My name is Robert Winfree, and what you're about to listen to is an old episode of a podcast I used to host called Everyone Loves a Bad Guy. This particular episode was a little bit less focused than some of the others. The others I usually had something of a subject material, a thesis, a brief to kind of go over. But this episode, originally aired October 25th, 2013, is just kind of a Halloween special. It's me and Sean Comer talking about some of our favorite Halloween traditions, stories, villainous things, some of our least favorite as well. Everyone Loves a Bad Guy was surprisingly positive most of the time. Given the subject material and my personality, it's a bit of a surprise. But it was a lot of positive stuff for the most part. This was one of the times when we could talk a little bit more about, things we just didn't like as much either. So, a little bit more of a grab bag, a lot looser format than usual, but a fun show, all in all. Not a format I ever repeated. I don't think I ever did too many other, I did a call-in special at one point. I did one that was all about TV villains. That was a call-in special as well. So, just not one I played around with a whole lot, but a solid, I think, show overall. So, if you could please give us a like, comment, subscribe, tell a friend, tell an enemy. Anything that you can do to help support the show in that particular respect is deeply appreciated by me and everyone else here. Also, if you don't want to do any of that, but you would like to help us out a bit, we can help you as well. And not just through entertainment, not just through killing time, not just through something to put on that helps put your children to bed. Although if you do that with us, I'm happy to provide that service as well. You see, for you, listeners of the W2M network, Grammarly is offering a free download of the Grammarly software. Grammarly's AI-powered products help people communicate more effectively. Grammarly helps you write mistake-free on Gmail, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and nearly anywhere else you write on the web. Grammarly corrects hundreds of grammar, punctuation, and spelling mistakes, while also catching contextual errors, improving your vocabulary, and suggesting style improvements. To download Grammarly today, go to getgrammarly.com/W2Mnetwork. Again, that's getgrammarly.com/W2Mnetwork to download Grammarly for free. So if you happen to write a lot, that is a wonderful service. We're willing to help you out there. Also, another way to potentially help us out and to help you out, streaming music. It's a wonderful thing, isn't it? Well, if you like it, there's not really a better service than Amazon Music Unlimited. And if you're listening to this, we can get you hooked up with 30 days free of charge for the Amazon Music Unlimited service. Their library of over 70 million songs. All at your fingertips, all ad-free. All you have to do is go to getamazonmusic.com/W2Mnetwork and tell them we're the ones that sent you, and you will get 30 days, no fuss, no muss, of that service free. At the end of that, if you like it, you can keep it and start paying for it. If not, you lost nothing. Not a darn thing. There's no risk to you whatsoever. It helps them, it helps us, and it helps you. So, if any of that strikes your fancy, that's again, you have getamazonmusic.com/W2Mnetwork or getgrammarly.com/W2Mnetwork. There are links to both in the description below this podcast if that's how you'd rather go about this. All right, with that out of the way, thank you again for listening. Throw it back to myself and Sean Comer, circa 2013. Hope you all enjoy the show.
When the devil is too busy and death a bit too much, they call on me by name, you see, for my special touch. To the gentlemen, I'm misfortune. To the ladies, I'm surprise. But call me by any name, anyway, it's all the same. I'm the fly in your suit, I'm the pedal in your shoe, I'm the bee beneath your bed, I'm the bump on every head, I'm the heel on which you slip, I'm the pin says that to me. I do it all because I'm evil, and I do it all for free. Your tears are all the pay I'll ever need.
Hello, and welcome to Everyone Loves a Bad Guy, coming to you weekly, for the moment, every Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. I am your host. I am the bad guy himself of, well, I don't know, Blog Talk Radio, I suppose, when they choose to. I got a sneaking suspicion because I have been guest hosting the Long Road to Ruin for the month of October because the normal host is gone, and some interesting developments stemming about from the podcast this week, and I want to get to that in just a second because some fun stuff came out of Long Road to Ruin this particular week, and it definitely needs to be touched on. So before we get too heavily into that, I have to introduce my guest tonight, the co-founder of the Long Road to Ruin, which is a completely wonderful podcast that I either guest host on at times or just contribute to from time to time. Sean Comer is here. He's back. He's taking a breather from playing Arkham Origins. I don't know if he's just recharging his DualShock controller or if he's just too darn frustrated with fighting Deathstroke. But, Sean, how you doing today?
Hello, Bishu. Actually, you're pretty much spot on. It just so happened that I finally came to a part of the game that I got just a little bit hung up on, and yeah, it was that first early fight with Deathstroke, and also, yeah, my pretty new DualShock that I just got has been off the charger all day. So it's a good time for me to just put it on and just stare lovingly at my Uncharted 3 background on the Fortress of Shawanotu and just do something a little more relaxing because God knows I am spent after the last 4 weeks of Long Road to Ruin.
The Hellraiser franchise is that exhausting and that frustrating at times.
God, you know what? It's a good, satisfied kind of exhausted because God knows I had fun. That was an absolute blast. But that last 30 minutes of our last show is, I don't know how Doug Walker carries off that kind of energy and how he's been doing it for over 5 years. It's no wonder he got burned out for a little bit and he had to just set the nostalgia critic character entirely aside. Because just that 1 30-minute rant on Hellraiser Revelation. Oh, God, it's kind of like how after a UFC title fight, oftentimes the champion just ends up just disappearing for like 4 or 5 months just to go recharge because it takes that much out of them.
Yeah, I mean, Hellraiser Revelations is like the Chupacabra. It comes out of nowhere, drains all of the life out of you, and then retreats back into the...
However...
But we do have good news.
Oh, yeah, folks, we couldn't make this up if we tried.
Yeah, so just before we get into tonight's show, which is just going to be kind of a hodgepodge of Halloween favorites, stuff that you enjoy this time of the year, but news that broke last night, apparently Dimension Films is working with Clive Barker to do to remake the original Hellraiser movie. Now, let's that particular idea has been bandied about for years and years on end, but in this particular instance, we have great news because, first of all, Clive Barker is working on it. Not just a consultant, he's actually writing the script. And he is insistent that Doug Bradley play Pinhead, and Doug Bradley should, and hopefully Doug Bradley will. But the reason this is not just good news, this is great news under any circumstances, but this particular bit of news comes about just days after Sean and I wrapped up discussing the Hellraiser franchise on the Long Road to Ruin. And towards the end of that, we did actually discuss that if you're going to make Hellraiser movies, you need Doug Bradley as Pinhead, you need input from someone like Clive Barker or someone who is very familiar with the source material. And we cursed out Dimension Films and the Weinstein Company and everyone associated with Hellworld and Revelations. And lo and behold, a few days later, we get our wish. Now, Were we the straw that broke the camel's back? Did our rant somehow get back to people in power through unpaid interns who were scour the internet listening for random people's opinions? Were we the catalyst? Were we the final straw? I can't say definitively, but I'd like to think so, because you know what? My ego could do with a bit of stroking every now and then, and I'm happy, and just the timing was just so perfect. I couldn't help but think, maybe we had a little something to do with that. And
you know
Sean's
what?
epic 30-minute rant may have finally been, if we can get this guy this pissed off about it, we should probably try to make this up to our fans.
You know what? I meant what I said last night. When I have a minute, when I'm not compelled to pop Arkham Origins back in and keep slagging my way through that, I really am tempted to look up what the best contact information would be for Mr. Barker and send him links to those two podcasts. Just for the hell of it, just to see if maybe it gets a response. Because you have to remember, we didn't have a bad thing to say about Clive Barker. We heaped nothing but glowing praise upon the first two movies and actually most of the third movie. We were pretty nice to most of the sequels. We only really started getting mad when it came to talking about Hellworld. And then we pretty much led off our discussion about Hellraiser Revelations with Clive Barker's epic disowning Twitter rant that concluded with the phrase, "This didn't even come from my butthole," in response
That's a
to
direct
Vox
quote.
that had the nerve to say that it was from the mind of Clive Barker.
It might be, like you said, when one of us or maybe Mark will, because he tends to be a bit more fastidious about things like this. Just as, I know he's on Twitter and everything, so it might be worth the effort just to say, thank you for everything you've done, and I'm just curious as to if your reaction was anything like this.
Well, I think Mark will probably have me do it because, number one, you got to keep in mind, of the two of us, Mark, and he's probably listening to the show right now, Mark is, by pretty much his own admission, a colossal fraidy pants when it comes to horror movies. He was not real happy about doing the Paranormal Activity.
No, I recall. He was a bit, the door shut on its own.
Yeah, he was not happy about that. So the two of us, I'm the one that has said so many times that one movie, the ninth Hellraiser movie, was one of the two movies I could really credit with giving me the inspiration to start this show. So I will be more than happy to just shoot the moon, drop Clive a line, and say, look, as a horror fan, I have loved this franchise for a while. I can even kind of stand the sequels. But I'm totally with you on the ninth Hellraiser. And you know what, quite frankly, if after Dimension fired him from the remake, if he's willing to come back on board and play nice and basically say, let me show y'all how it's done, then he's a more forgiving man than I would be. Because if he kicked off the project and then have him turn around and fund something like Revelations with a $300,000 budget and a 2-week shooting schedule, I can't begin to imagine what that's like to have that done to one of your creations. That would be like having them kick me off 411 and then turn around and give life back to music over to like AJ Gray or Justin Watry or somebody that just would have no business tackling the topic the way that I would. I'd be pissed. So when it comes to a franchise that's basically his legacy, I can't begin to imagine how he must have really felt. I imagine that tweet was probably the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, there's only so much you can say in 140 characters, even if you do break it up over 2 or 3 different installments.
You know what? I'm really happy this is going to be a remake and not a sequel. I can't believe I'm saying that.
Well, there's a couple of things that go into that. First of all, we've had 8 sequels, which is more than enough. The original was done in, what was it, the early 80s? I forget when the original movie came out, and I'm being kind of lazy tonight, so I'm probably not going to look it up, but it's been out for a while. You could revisit at least the original with the possibility of a remake or a reimagining, and, you know, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I mean, we get kind of hard on remakes and reboots and various other random titles thrown around by Hollywood, but when they redid the original Friday the 13th and the original Nightmare on Elm Street, and even when Rob Zombie got a hold of Halloween, you know, there were, I don't want to talk about Friday the 13th remake here because it would just aggravate me a bit too much, but with the other two, and again, the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street has issues, but there are good points as well. They've been out for a while. It's not the worst thing in the world to look to, you know, maybe see what we can do with, you know, modern special effects. And that's not to say I want it all CGI, because I'm a big believer in practical stuff as well, but, you know, techniques and whatnot have improved. It's not the end of the world to revisit it in the form of a remake or a reimagining. Again, insert generic title number 37 here if you feel the need to.
Well, you know, occasionally when it comes to horror movies especially, you get remakes or even sequels where you're privileged enough to get the original mind on board. And really, since we're just kind of loosely just talking about our favorite Halloween, two of my all-time favorites, maybe even ones that I rank above Hellraiser, if you can believe that, are only two of the Nightmare on Elm Street, and that's the original, obviously. But the other one is Wes Craven's New Nightmare, because this is the first time I can really remember this being the case with a major horror franchise. They went so long throughout most of that series without Wes Craven having any involvement whatsoever. He did the first movie, and that was it. He didn't write or direct anything from Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, right up Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. However, he had this really crazy kind of meta idea for Wes Craven's New Nightmare. He wrote it, and he came back on board to direct. And lo and behold, that is the second best movie in the entire series. The only other two times I can think of when there's really been a situation like that was, number one, and this didn't pan out with results quite as successful, mind you, wasn't quite as appealing, when Sam Raimi made The Grudge, he also had, creatively, Takeshi Shimizu, who directed the Japanese original Ju-On, The Grudge, and it's on board for that one. The American localization wasn't quite as good. It didn't pack the same atmosphere as the Japanese original did, but it was a good effort. It was all right. But then you turn around, and a number of years later, all of a sudden, somebody wants to redo Evil Dead. Well, not only Sam Raimi, but Bruce Campbell himself came on board to kind of consult on it and make sure that it was really going in the right direction. And again, even that's kind of breaking new ground, because the idea behind that, they're going to make a sequel to the new Evil Dead that came out last year. Or was it this year? My movie calendar's all off.
Last year, I think.
Last year, yeah. I think so.
It wasn't.
Either way, they're going to make a sequel to that one. And along the way, Sam and Bruce are actually going to make a sequel to Army of Darkness. And then there's going to be a fourth movie that's going to combine the two timelines.
One can only hope it turns out as awesome as it sounds in theory.
Yeah, that does. That sounds outstanding. But in those cases, things panned out as well as they did because you had the original mind on board. I even got to think, with all due respect to Sam Raimi, that had Shimizu not been on board with The Grudge, I don't know if it would have come out quite as well.
Probably not, but my issue with The Grudge is that its success is what spawned all of the other crappy Americanization of Japanese horror movies that we got over the next several years.
Oh, actually, The Ring did that.
Well, The Ring came before The Grudge, and if The Grudge had kind of fizzled, it probably would have been, oh, okay, we got one, and it was kind of an aberration.
And by the way, I might add The Ring is another one of my favorites.
Yeah, I mean, I pointed that, it's like, okay, The Grudge did well, so that means we now get Dark Waters, Mirrors, One Missed Call,
an awful remake of The Eye, and I'm sure there's more that I'm forgetting because I chose to forget them.
Now, the only two that I would say really worked out well would be the first iteration of The Ring and, to a far, far lesser extent, The Grudge. Those are about the only two where I would actually patently say, yeah, that worked. But in this case, again, I will see this just out of curiosity, just because right off the top of my head, I can't remember one time when the creator of an original horror franchise, at least not one the caliber of Hellraiser, has come on and said, I want to completely remake my first.
I'm with you. I can't remember. I certainly can't think of any off the top of my head. Anybody out there, feel free to post comments and insult us for not knowing some obscure piece of cinema. And, that's not me being snarky. It's the horror genre we're discussing here. There's a lot of obscure stuff that is very good. That I just haven't happened to have seen. So,
well, speaking of which, here's a question for you. What are some of your favorite horror movies that you watch during this time of year? The ones that you really like to make a point of marathoning on October 3rd?
Oh, it's so odd for me because I like horror movies, but I'm not a huge fan of marathoning pretty much anything in general. But I generally around this time of year I make an effort to watch. Well, not this year, but in previous years I've made an effort to watch Hellraiser because I just think the first two are so well done, and Pinhead's awesome. And my predilections with horror kind of run the entire gamut, but I do enjoy a good. There's some gorehound in me, so stuff like Hellraiser or the new Evil Dead movie, they don't bother me all that much, so I get a kick out of them. And I don't think my any Halloween for me is complete without watching at least the first Saw movie because I think Jigsaw's awesome, and I really enjoy the first two especially. The first two movies. After that, not so much, but what are you going to do?
Oh, God. I got a little more endurance than most people because when it comes to Saw, I actually like the first three.
There's elements of three that I like. I have a couple of problems. One, they almost lost me early on when Jigsaw tells the doctor that he's abducted that you have to keep me alive or you die, even though he's in the final stages of terminal cancer and can't possibly be kept alive. Granted, he explains a minute or so later that I just need to see this particular device through, and then I can die and you can be free. I just need to be alive until then. But they kind of should have, but for my money, they should have led with that instead of, no, you just have to keep me alive. It's like, wait a minute, you can't win there. There's no. And my other issue with that one came in the last 5 to 10 minutes when it seemed like, oh crap, we haven't had enough gore. Yeah. And again, I fall into the gorehound category more often than not. I just like for it to serve a purpose and to serve the story. So when, especially the later Saw entries, when it's just like, hey, I wonder how much stuff we can show on screen. It's like, no, you're not doing anything good. You're not trying to tell a story. It serves no purpose. You're just creating schlock. And it's just, no, be gone. Go away. Quit desecrating something that was so awesome.
One of the big things that I really like about First the Whole, here, briefly, I'll get back to that in 1 second, but a brief aside, while we're talking, I'm chatting live with Jackie, our Long Road to Ruin superfan. Robert, made any favorite horror movies we can throw out there look good by comparison because she says her favorite go-to Halloween movie is Hocus.
It's the Halloween season. If you enjoy stuff like that, have at it,
I kid. It's Disney Halloween movies, and I guess it's mildly amusing.
Dude, watching Nazis get the crap kicked out of them by enchanted suits of armor? Or am I confusing them? I think I am. Now I got to look it up. I'm thinking of like bed knobs and broomsticks.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Well, I don't watch a lot of live action Disney movies.
No, I was just briefly excited because I was thinking, is there a director's cut out there that I don't know about? Do you like it? No, actually, it's worth watching for the pure hilarity. And the funny thing is, I didn't I didn't realize this until I was actually watching NCIS with Scarlett one time, and she had never seen the show before, and I had some episodes of it handy, just laying around, and I knew that there was a very young pre-boob explosion Thora Birch in there before she kind of grew into her American Beauty role. I did not know that Thackeray Binks was played by Sean Murray, McGee from NCIS.
I don't watch NCIS or its
now,
derivative or CSI or its derivatives.
See, now, folks, if I had been hosting this show with Ari Bernstein, he would have probably just given me a collective, oh, no shit.
Quite possibly.
Because in addition to being an ROH lexicon, Ari is also a big, big NCIS guy. One more reason. But, no, that's far from the worst movie you could watch on Halloween. Actually, one year, I'm quite proud of the marathon that I put together because, and do not ask me how I came up with this particular combination of movies. Back when I was in college in Maryville, every one of my friends managed to flake out on a planned movie marathon that we were going to do. And so I actually got the satisfaction of enjoying all on my own a combination of, what else? The Shining, Strangeland, and Secret Window.
Oh, that's kind of an odd setup, although more power to Dee Snider, because he's kind of awesome.
You know, you would not have thought the lead singer of Twisted Sister would have made a really seriously creepy horror movie villain. Damn if he didn't pull it off, though.
He did, and just, well, you also have Robert Englund in that movie as a redneck who winds up in body suspension, which is always fun to see how people interpret that on screen when they're not actually doing it. Plus, my biggest kick out of that entire movie, and I enjoyed a lot of it, but Robert Englund does not die from his prolonged hanging from his skin. And as he's being wheeled away, he's on a stretcher, he's wrapped up to his neck, and just the look on his face, he's wide-eyed, looking back and forth from side to side, and just the way he does that, I couldn't help but laugh because it was just so awesome seeing him have fun like that.
He works those facial muscles just so incredibly. You want to talk about somebody who can act through the makeup. And then he wasn't even wearing makeup. But the man's claim to fame is how much he was able to convey as Freddy Krueger despite being caked quite literally just about head to toe in prosthetics.
Yeah, it's awesome. Plus, well, the other movie that, if you're in kind of a fun Halloween mood, you should probably see the Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon.
I have seen it. I love that movie.
Well, I know, I'm speaking in general, but Robert Englund is the good guy. Kane Hodder has a couple of appearances.
Yep. Just
a really fun kind of... I have to imagine that movie is to horror what, like, Vince McMahon coming out and saying we think you're tired of having your intelligence insulted is to the world of professional wrestling.
I thought that was what Scream was.
No. Scream just points out all of the tropes. I like that with Behind the Mask, you have him come out and say, okay, so backstories are faked, and so I have to do gobs of cardio, and so I have to take all the spark plugs out of the cars and nail all these windows shut. I mean, come on, there's 5 of them and one of me.
Oh, who was it? I was watching this weekend over on That Guy with the Glasses? I was watching Brad Jones' Friday the 13th Cinema Snob review. And I think he referred to Scream as being something like irritatingly meta or annoyingly meta. One of the few times I would disagree with him. I love Scream. That's another one at this time of year I love to. If I think to put it in, I love to pop it in and just sit back and enjoy it.
Well, as long as you skip the third one.
And again, the third one is...
Your mileage may vary, folks.
The third one was okay, but it definitely suffers for the fact that there was no Kevin Williams. That
helps very little.
See, what else? What else is a good one to watch this time of year?
I'm going to go find the specifics, but frequent contributor to this particular podcast and a regular in the 411 MMA Zone, Pat Mullen, requested that he mentioned that he brought up specifically the Pumpkinhead franchise, which, if you've never seen them, I didn't rewatch them because I was a little annoyed at Lance Henriksen, just because I recently watched Hellworld and Lance Henriksen's in that.
No, but Lance Henriksen was good at it.
Yeah, it's a really fun movie. For those of you who haven't seen it, Lance Henriksen's son is killed accidentally by, like, the stereotypical rich douchebags, teenagers, and to seek justice, he goes to the local witch. They call up a demon, which looks pretty awesome for the time, and he then goes on a killing rampage to attain justice for the tragic death of that poor kid. And you get Lance Henriksen going, well, I didn't want this at one point, and he tries to stop the demon, and it's just a fun little horror movie, and I enjoyed the ending too, so I won't spoil it.
Lance was chewing so damn much scenery, he must have been shitting particle board for a month after that movie wrapped. And hats off to him, because he plays this mentally a little bit off redneck dad. I'll be damned if it doesn't work, though.
Yeah, it's a credit to Lance, kind of, as far as that goes.
In my opinion, Pumpkinhead is one really surprisingly good monster movie, 2 really bad sequels, and what I think has to be a contender for one of the most broken ever actually conceived and without apology, put on shelves so that people could trade hard-earned money. Seriously, if you have never seen a gameplay video of the PC game Pumpkinhead, I think it was either B or it was one of the early failed CD-based.
I don't know. I'll look it up.
Like Atari Jaguar, I want to say. Go on YouTube and look up a gameplay video of it, and just stare on in shock. And keep in mind, this got a commercial release. People actually sank money into making it. It is absolutely incredible. It defies description to watch. It's like somebody's special cousin made the world's worst clone of.
Oh, doom.
And tried to wedge some FMV elements.
Yeah, there's odd video games come out of horror movies, and yet we still want a Hellraiser one because it hasn't been done. So that's the other thing. Game developers, we threw this out on Long Road to Ruin. I'll reiterate. Get a good Hellraiser video game together. If they're remaking the original movie, you can probably turn out a decent game to be released around the same time.
You know what? It's really a crying shame that Silicon Knights pretty much is no more, because really, who else would you in good conscience trust to actually make a great atmospheric horror game but the people who gave the world Eternal Darkness Sandy's Requiem?
I'm not as up on game developers and whatnot as I should be, so I'm the wrong guy to ask that question.
Okay, did you at any point when you were younger own a Nintendo game?
Still have one, I think.
Still have one. Okay. Have you ever played Eternal Darkness?
No.
Okay.
Have not. Need to. I'm not as... there are video games that I enjoy. I'm not as big into it as maybe, considering what I do in my spare time, like stuff like this, I maybe should be more up to date on them and more conversant with them. But I have heard about it and I've heard good things. So atmospheric horror games are kind of tough to come out with good ones, unless even then they're also kind of a tough sell. Unless you have the Resident Evil name in front of it, in which case, hey, any old crap.
It's atmospheric Lovecraftian.
I do love me some Lovecraft.
Yeah, with one of the most effective gameplay games, one of the most highly regarded that I think any game on Internet has ever come up with, and that is the sanity mechanic.
Well, that's in other games I've played, Dark Corners of the Earth specifically.
Yeah, but this game did
it best. But did it first and probably did it best, yeah. I'll have to see if I can find a copy of that, maybe.
We're talking about a game that at various points will fake you out and make you crash and is erasing your data.
Oh, I see you play Castlevania a lot.
Okay, imagine that, and then imagine something more strategic, sadistic, and actually meticulous setup throughout the game.
Oh, crap, I'm trying to run from the Shoga. Wait, no, don't crash. No, I can't see where I'm going. Oh, I ran in.
Yeah, something kind of like that.
Okay. I found a couple of other requests. I can't believe I didn't remember this one. But speaking of Halloween movies, the horror anthology movie Trick or Treat.
Which, I hate to say that I have never seen. I had meant to see that for a long time, and I always had it on my Netflix list. And then the other day, Obscurus Lupa is a little bit of a kind of a stopgap between other projects, posted one of her a quick look at review and gave it just glowing praise as being a pretty damn good little anthology. And, of course, I go to Netflix to check and see if it's still up for streaming. Yeah, lo and behold, it's not.
Nope.
So, I don't know. I'll probably have to settle for watching something, well, and I hate to call it, no, I shouldn't call it settling for. That's really not doing it. Personally, I'm a Creep Show guy.
Creep Show's a pretty good one, too. Well, I first saw Trick or Treat because Joseph Lee, the horror guru at 411 Mania and the Movies and Television Zone, speaks very highly of it pretty much whenever he gets a chance to. So I streamed it when it was on Netflix, and I wound up enjoying it. So for anybody out there who hasn't seen it, if you like horror anthology, it is done well. You get some cool kills, you get some interesting stories, and if you don't mind seeing Anna Paquin, you have the one that she is involved in.
Sure. There are so few really great horror ants. So many try to do it, and so few do it well. Oh, there was one that I watched recently, a really bad independent, and I can't remember what it is.
VHS?
No, although that wasn't exactly any great shakes.
The ABCs of Death?
Okay, well, if we're going to talk about ABCs of Death...
Let's not, please.
You know what? In my lifetime...
Before you go on, for those of you who are unaware of this particular film, the basic concept is you have 26 very short movies, each one directed by a different director, and they each get a different letter from the alphabet. And that has to be... The title for each of the different shorts is A is for Armageddon, for example. And you go on down the line, A through... And each of them just has to deal with death in one way or another. And they refer to the movie as the ABCs of Death, and you get, 3 out of the 20 out of the entire thing that are actually, worthwhile.
Yeah, it's... I wouldn't say 3. There's maybe a few more than that. But my thing is some of the rest of them are just... And I'm not one who's real squeamish about gore or things being too twisted or too macabre. Most movie was really hard to stomach.
Well, it doesn't seem to serve a purpose. It's just like, hey, look, let's see how much we can throw out there.
Yeah, I mean, the one where the guys are trying to figure out what to do with Q, and they decide that they're going to do Quack, and they're going to go kill a duck out in the desert. Okay, that one was actually pretty funny.
Well, I mean, if you want to talk about the specific ones, that one I got a kick out of. I liked Dogfight.
Yes, I liked that one too. That was good.
Yeah, I will look up the entire list, and I'll see which ones I thought were ABCs of Death.
Oh God!
Not Armageddon.
The one that had the anthropomorphic furries.
That was an odd one. That was
that one was a big buffet of what the fuck.
H. H is for hydroelectric diffusion.
Oh yeah. If you ever wonder what would happen if a bunch of horny furries got together and decided to bring to life a Tex Avery cartoon, there you go.
Yeah.
Oh, there was the one killer toilet.
There's a lot of odd ones that fall in there.
So much wrong. It was actually the one thing I can say that was close to that in terms of really disgusting me to the point that I didn't want to finish it. Movie that came out of Asia called 3
Oh, I believe I've heard of this.
Oh, yeah, because actually the first story in this trilogy anthology actually ended up being developed into a full-length movie. The first time I tried to watch it, I eventually did go back and watch the entire thing, but the first time I tried to watch it, I got to the part in the first story where it's revealed that the weird apartment lady's secret for looking forever young was eating dumplings stuffed with chopped up aborted fetuses.
Yeah, the Japanese, it's not just Japanese, but the Eastern Asian horror movement as of late became just a lot of, let's see how gross we.
Yeah, and that's disappointing because we mentioned The Ring and Ju-on earlier. There's some unsettling images in those, but I wouldn't say there's really anything patently gross.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you want to see something with some real atmospheric tension to it, I actually really enjoy the Japanese version of The Eye, not the crappy Jessica Alba reimagining, whatever you want to call it.
I've never seen either, to be perfectly honest.
The Japanese one is worth looking up. It's got some interesting scenes in.
You know, we mentioned video games and movies a little bit ago. Allow me to throw this one out there, and feel free to chastise me for this if you want to.
Okay.
I actually liked the first Silent Hill movie.
I do too.
Yep. Quite frankly, if I'm to look at it from the perspective of a gamer, yes, I'm appalled at all the things they changed from the game to the movie because they didn't seem to change them for any good reason. They just changed them because change. That's it. That's all there is to it. They apparently felt that was all the justification they needed. And they were stupid changes, and they ended up having a trickle-down effect that actually did really hurt some other aspects of the movie. But if you had called this movie just about anything else, it's quite like the way I view Halloween 3. It's actually otherwise pretty well executed. The visuals are outstanding. The tone, the atmosphere, the music, the sound design, the costume, it's all really, really well done, especially when you consider how many of the creature effects are practical.
Oh, yeah. When I saw Silent Hill, I have never, to this day, never played any of the games. I'm aware of them. I have friends who are very high on them. So when I saw Silent Hill, I was like, okay, I know it's based on a video game, but I went in and I just basically enjoyed a horror movie as opposed to a video game adaptation.
Right. And actually, to be honest, I actually feel kind of the same way about the first Resident Evil movie. It's a little bit of a guilty pleasure, but, I liked it. I mean, it certainly has its stupid moments, and it has its moments where it's really, really laughable. But all things considered, as zombie action movies go,
there's a lot worse than that.
Yeah, I rather like it. And, she, overall, in the traditional sense, no, she can't act her way out of a fucking paper bag. But I will give Mila Jovovich this. Speaking relatively in terms of her generation of actresses, she's kind of, when it comes to being able to do her own stunts and take her own bumps, she's kind of her generation's Sigourney Weaver or Linda Hamilton. Now, that's not a direct comparison, mind you. Please don't any of my colleagues who might be listening to this show think about hitting me up and laying into me because you think I'm trying to say that her character is up there on par with Sarah Connor and Ellen Ripley. I'm not. I'm just saying take some serious commitment to take some of the licks that she does while filming these things. But actually,
the fact that her husband is directing them doesn't hurt, I suppose.
Well, no, obviously that's the reason this whole thing keeps going. I mean, but then again, not the first time we can ever say that. I mean, come on. By all means, go ahead. Name me 10 movies Helena Bonham Carter would have been in if her husband hadn't been directing.
Domestic Partner, they're not actually.
What the fuck ever. the side point being, if Johnny Depp had tits and a vagina, Helena would be out of the. But as it stands.
Yeah, nepotism, ladies and gentlemen. It's alive, it's well, and yes, we all suffer for it from time to time.
Eventually.
The other one movie that I want to talk about here, because I get double action out of this movie as far as holidays go, because I view Gremlins on Halloween, and I view it on Christmas. So if you have some thoughts on the Gremlins, it's funny, there's only 2 movies. You still can kind of refer to it as a franchise, but the first one in particular, I just have such a soft spot for the blend of horror and comedy that that Joe Dante and Steven Spielberg kind of crafted together with that movie.
First Gremlin's good, second Gremlin's not bad, but unnecessary.
Well, that's kind of the joke with Gremlins 2. It's meant to be a parody of sequels. I mean,
yeah.
Well, I like when you get into like some of the stories behind it, it is almost like too meta for its own good. Would be the phrasing that you'd throw out there today.
Yeah. Actually, you're probably right. That probably is a pretty good way.
But I get a kick out of the first one. The first time I saw it, I was a kid. But one of the selling points for me was midway through the movie. The Gremlins break into the projector room and ruin the movie for everyone, and Hulk Hogan happens to be in the theater, so he intimidates the Gremlins into starting things back up properly. And Hulk Hogan promo from the mid '80s aimed at Gremlins. You can't go wrong.
God damn it, Hulk Hogan won't even job a mutated Mogwai.
Well, they are kind of little.
There's just nobody that man would lay down for.
Well, I think there's another version of it where it's John Wayne that gets them to start it back up again. And since I was raised on John Wayne movies, that was a fun one for me as well. Oh,
a lot of people our age were raised on John Wayne.
I still watch them from time to time if I just what do I feel like watching? Oh, hey, there's Big Jake. That'll work.
See, for me, it's McClintock. That's my John Wayne.
That's
specifically the mud fight scene.
That mud fight is awesome.
And
of course, if you want a great mud fight, you also have North to Alaska.
And just to be uncomfortably politically incorrect, the Indian at the mud fight.
Oh man. Where the whiskey?
No whiskey. We go home now.
Oh man. It's one of those things that probably shouldn't be funny, but you can't help but laugh at it.
Oh, come on. Product of its time. It's like the fact that when I sit here and I read the earliest Silver Age Green Lantern books, you just, for the first issue or two, when you realize that he's got a little Eskimo mechanic that Hal Jordan repeatedly calls Pie Face, and who routinely exclaims jumping fish hooks, and who has an Eskimo wife who for her first appearance barely speaks a word of English. You're uncomfortable for a little bit at first, then you quickly remember when this stuff came.
Well, clearly the writers of Green Lantern were influenced by Lovecraft, because he has some interesting theories about where Eskimos came from.
See, I haven't read much Lovecraft, so...
He also has the best description of penguins ever.
How did he describe penguins?
Evilly. I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but I get a kick out of it every time.
Oh, come on. Surely you've seen the GIF where the one penguin is walking by the other, and the penguin just reaches up and just decks him upside the head and knocks him through the thin ice.
Oh, but yeah, he has some malevolent descriptions of penguins. He has some odd. Yeah, he ends one of his stories with these, evil beings that came up from the Arctic Ocean years and years ago, wound up inbreeding with people, which is a big theme in a lot of his work, and we got Eskimos as a result through, generations upon generations, diluting the.
And folks, if you watch something a little more lighthearted this Halloween, just for a little bit of fun. And Robert and I love this because we were joking about this right before the show. The complete Invader Zim, even the unaired episodes, is obviously available on DVD. It's no longer available on Netflix because Viacom took their ball and went home, presumably because they looked at how much what they were really making off the deal with Netflix and realized, gee, what do we really have left to pay Tito Ortiz?
Who's now injured and out of his pay-per-view fight with Rampage.
Wait, what?
Oh, yeah, forget, you've been playing Arkham Origins. Yeah, he had news broke today, he suffered some kind of severe neck injury. He's out of the fight.
You are shitting me.
Nope. Tito Ortiz suffered a neck injury. The fight with Rampage is off. It will no longer be on pay-per-view. It will be Bellator 106 for you on Spike TV with the main event of Eddie Alvarez and Michael Chandler, too.
Okay. Brief break for Sean to rant on MMA here for a second. Because if there's two real passions I have that don't really kind of get across in the stuff I normally do for 411, it's the fact that, number one, I'm a 20-plus year wrestling fan. of lots of different promotions, including TNA. And number two, I have also been a longtime MMA fan. Let me see if I've got this straight. TNA not too long ago pretty much let scads of people go, including some really talented ones, including Matt Batista basically got the push that I deserve more than.
Well, they released that poor guy who almost broke his neck on a spot.
Yeah, true. Jesse Sorensen. Jesse Sorensen, who quite literally broke his neck working for the company and was working backstage while he was trying to rehab to make an in-ring comeback. He gets released. He's actually making his debut, I believe, tomorrow night for ROH. And this is along with several other people, Victoria.
They did some house cleaning, and some of the people they released were useless. Some of them were good.
Victoria gone. Mickey James gone. There's several other people gone who weren't being used. Well, at the same time, TNA comes up with this fucking convoluted storyline just because, basically, they're licking the boots of Viacom execs right now, and Viacom owns the signed in blood on contract souls of Quentin Jackson and Tito Ortiz to shoehorn them needlessly into a main event angle that did precisely fuck all just to promote a damn pay-per-view fight that is now not even going to happen.
Well, if you followed the wrestling continuity, Rampage was the one who got hit in the head with the ball-peen hammer. Tito's the one who pulled out with an injury.
TNA, you know what? You deserve every single last WCW comparison you get, normally. However, this is, if not the first time ever, at the very least the first time in a long, long while that I have been able to look at one of your angles and say that you now have an equivalent to Rick Steiner versus Chucky.
Oh, God bless Rick Steiner.
An angle you spent fucking weeks building up that has now gone absolutely nowhere. And, Bellator, in the words of Paul Heyman, I almost forgot about you.
Now, Paul Heyman's phrase now is lava.
I know, but you know what? I remember the original ECW One Night Stand. And
I almost forgot about you.
Oh, yeah, my favorite part of that entire fucking thing. I want to say he was directing that at either JBL or Edge. It was the one that was either...
No, that was JBL. His intro for Edge was Hide Your Wives.
Yeah. You want to shoot Cowboy, Mr. Bounce Checks, Mr. Bingo Hall? The only reason
you were WWE champion for a year was because Triple H didn't want to work Tuesdays.
Absolutely. And then just pretty much a mic drop. Well, you know what? Quite frankly, I like the new main event. Okay? I think it's a damn shame what happened to Eddie Alvarez. And small consolation, but consolation nonetheless. He gets the main event of pay-per-view and get a chance to get his lightweight back.
No, it's not on pay-per-view anymore.
Oh, that's right. Never
free
mind.
TV.
Now it's going to be a fucking free TV card.
No pay-per-view points for Eddie Alvarez.
Fucking Bjorn Rebney. But you know what? My God, Bjorn, tell me you weren't surprised that this happened. That's impossible.
Yeah. Tito's ability to remain healthy is on par with Gurr's ability to be useful.
The only thing is, you know what? When Tito loses a fight, you want to sit back with about the same attitude as you would have if you were listening to Shawn Michaels recount the bar fight in, because you just want to hear what overcoming the odds story he's going to come up with this time.
I have my skull cracked.
Yeah, you know how every time Shawn tells the story, it goes from I pissed off one Marine to I took on the entire 101st Airborne with one arm tied behind my back, or like listening to Hulk Hogan continue to enhance how big Andre the Giant was when he slammed him. Well, in this case, you want to just sit back and just hear Tito Ortiz's medical report. on what
Which
was
is not
Cameron.
valid, by the way, because if he had half of those injuries, they wouldn't have let him fight in the first place. Well, maybe in Texas.
Yeah. My personal favorite one was cracked skull.
Yeah, you came into a fight with a cracked skull. I'm sure that... Yeah, right.
Fuck you, Tito. You lying sack of shit. It's a sport where they stop fights over eye poke.
Well, to be... yeah, it is. Hypothetically, yes.
And that's not to minimize the eye pokes, but they stopped them over eye pokes. They stopped them over groin shots. Hell, Michael Bisping has a TKO win on his record
because he kneed a guy in the head when he was in the down position deliberately.
Yeah, we're talking about the Alan Belcher fight, right?
No, that was a decision.
Was it a decision? Which one am I thinking?
Because it happened in the third round, they went to a technical decision.
Okay, yeah, you're right. That's what I'm thinking of. I'm sorry. The UFC's been so bland the last couple of years that decisions just start running together. But my God, when I think of all the money they've spent, the ultimate karmic reach around with a purple nurple finisher for that little twat Bjorn, for all the shit he talks, would be for it to turn out when they look at the balance sheet. Wow. Guys, if we had never signed the washed-up duo here, we would have enough money to pay Ben Askren.
Not that anyone wants to pay Ben Askren.
Well, no, but in this case, I'm so pissed at Bellator over the way they treated Eddie Alvarez and the fact that now, let's face it, there's pretty much no chance we're going to see a prime Alvarez in the UFC. It's probably never going to happen.
Very unlikely at this point.
Yeah, they may get him when he's just maybe a year or two past his prime. But the question of could he have beaten Ben Henderson when he was champ or given Anthony run for his money? Maybe not. Now we're never going to fucking know. We're damn sure never going to get...
Eddie Alvarez gets rocked and hurt in the first round of every fight he's ever been in. I mean, there was a joke that that Sam Mercati and I passed around for a bit after the Alvarez and Chandler fight, because in every fight he's in, Eddie Alvarez gets hit and hurt in the first round. Samer posited, what would happen if Frankie Edgar fought Eddie Alvarez? Because Frankie Edgar also always gets nailed and hurt in the first round.
Well,
so we threw speculation. Mine was we get a double count out. We get the first ever double count out, no decision in UFC history, or we get a first 8-8 round.
No, because you know what? I hate to say it. I know I'm going to one day be proven wrong, but I'm just going to go ahead and throw this out there anyway. I'm convinced that Frankie Edgar cannot be knocked out.
I have no idea what it would take to do it.
You know what? I really seriously think that little son of a bitch might be part pikey.
It's entirely possible.
You know what? It's just quite frankly, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Gray Maynard is exactly the Mike Tyson of the lightweight division. However, that being said, Gray beat the ever-loving stop, he's already dead piss out of Frankie, and all it seemed to do was wake him up in both fights. If Frankie had a little more of a killer instinct, it would almost be like fighting Diego Sanchez or Chris Lieben, to the point to where you're actually afraid to hurt him because you think you might just make him mad.
You wouldn't like him when he's angry.
No, but actually, really though, Eddie Alvarez versus Frankie Edgar, fuck, I'd love to see that fight. The only problem is, it took too damn long to make it happen, and now Frankie's probably not going back up to 155 anytime soon.
He's fighting DJ Penn at what I assume is going to wind up being a catchweight fight.
Yeah, fighting probably like 150 or 147 or something. Although I hear DJ...
I assume that the week leading up to that fight, they're going to announce it gets changed to a catchweight.
I always figured that would actually be what would happen if Uriah Faber and Frankie finally decided to talk turkey and make a fight between the two of them, that they would just come up with a compromise like that. But apparently, Uriah wouldn't want to come up 5 pounds to 140. Frankie wouldn't want to go 5 down to 140. So that's another awesome fight we're probably never going to get.
Until Frankie loses another 2 title fights at featherweight and has to drop down to bantamweight. Of course, by that point, Faber will have lost 2 more title fights at bantamweight and have to retire.
You know what, though? At this point, we're not coming up, I think, probably not until... I think we're about maybe another 2 more Aldo title defenses before we finally do start coming back around to rematches.
Nah, Aldo's moving up.
Now, okay, again, maybe I missed something. Has he definitively said that?
There's not a definitive timetable, but all indications are that next year, like either early 15 or late 14, he's going to be done and just move up to lightweight. At which point, Henry Barrow will move up to featherweight, and Uriah Faber might have a shot at becoming a champion at bantamweight.
Yeah, because Uriah, I don't think, would stand a chance against Hennen. But
he already lost to him, and would again.
But Uriah against Cruz, especially after Cruz is coming off being gone for 2 years of milking the apparent naked pictures of Dana White to hold on to that title. Yeah, I'd probably favor Faber in that one.
Yeah, possibly. All right. Now that we've gone completely off track because Tito Ortiz got injured again. Good for you, Tito. Is there just real quick, kind of 100 words or less? Is there any movie that we haven't touched on, or any specific bad guy from a Halloween or Halloween favorite films that you want to touch on real fast?
The only other 2 I can think of that are kind of out of left field that I would want to touch on real fast. Number 1, said before, I'll say it again. Grave Encounters, one of the few few found footage movies that actually gets it right. Is actually really intense, pretty scary. Do not bother with the sequel. I've done warned you. Don't do it. And the other one, although it's not exactly what you'd call a horror movie, Cube.
I call the Cube a horror movie.
I don't know. It's kind of... I tend to look at more of as a sci-fi suspense thriller than really being patently horror. But if you have
the line between thriller and horror is a very blurry one, and it wiggles a lot.
I mean, it's not exactly high budget. It's got a good suspenseful story. Well,
don't watch any of the sequels.
Oh God, no! Heavens, no! And one last one, just since I mentioned it a podcast or 2 ago. But I mentioned on our Haunted Locations podcast, the 13 Ghosts remake.
Yep, that's a good one. If you can find it, folks.
It's surprisingly good. It's got a pretty solid cast too. It's got F. Murray Abraham, Shannon Elizabeth, Matthew Lillard in one of the rare instances in which he's tolerable for more than 5 minutes. Tony Shalhoub is great in the lead.
And Tony Shalhoub's always great.
Rod Digga plays every stereotypical horror black lady ever. And it's got a soundtrack that features my favorite song by Tricky called Excess.
Can't go wrong.
No going wrong with Tricky.
All right, and I think that's going to wrap us up tonight for this one. We're in overtime, but this was a shorter episode than usual for a variety of reasons. But fun was had here. Quick plug for next week. The 1st of November is Friday. Night after Halloween, Sean's coming back, and we're going to talk about Freddy Krueger.
Yep.
So please tune in for that. It will be awesome.
Good. Add the welcome to primetime, bitch. How's this for a Western?
I find that one to be more of a bad line than welcome to primetime. Of course, the fact that it's in a worse movie doesn't help.
Where does that rank in comparison to Now I'm Playing with Power and I Told You comic books was bad for you?
Oh, man. Just so many bad lines.
So many bad lines, and yet in Wes Craven's New Nightmare, that part where he says, how this ever play Skin the Cat, have fresh pants to change into, Andy.
So, please return next week for that. It will be awesome. We'll have a lot of fun with that one. During the month of November, I'm going to switch to an every other week format just because the holidays are coming on. So it won't be every Friday. It will be every other Friday. I'll get that nailed down specifically. I don't know I'm not sure the entirety of what I'm going to talk about in November, but Mark Radulich wants to come on and talk Darth Vader, and Thanksgiving is, family get-together time, so, hey, we'll talk about Vader. And no, we will not be discussing little, whiny, bull haircut bitch kid from The Phantom Menace. So you have that to look forward to here on Everyone Loves a Bad Guy. If I could get a couple of other quick plugs, I am guest hosting the 411 Ground and Pound radio show this Sunday because Mark he has stuff that he's doing, so I'm stepping in to host that. If you're a fan of MMA, we'll be reviewing UFC Fight Night 30, and we'll probably be making fun of Tito Ortiz because, hey, why not? Any plugs you want to throw out there, Sean?
Well, I might as well throw in the Long Road to Ruin schedule that Mark modified while I was November 5th, because I've had 4 weeks of watching blood, guts, and souls being torn apart. We're going to turn from that to the Toy Story trilogy, which I guarantee you is going to be one.
Best trilogy on film, period.
I guarantee you is going to be one of the few podcasts when I don't say the word fuck once. Then we have got kind of a little bit of a mini hiatus after that because the 12th is Metal Hammer of Doom, November 19th. Mark is off due to a holiday/cruise, so that's going to be either a week off or I grab a guest host and we decide to do something. November 26th, Mark has got the Metal Hammer of Doom year-end special, and then finally December 3rd, one day after I turned 31 candles, the first 3 Die Hard movies. 1 week after that, we're doing the 4th and 5th Die Hard debacles. And then finally, we are going to round out 2013 on December 17th with the Santa Claus trilogy. After that, Mark and I are going to go away for a few weeks. We're going to recharge our respective batteries because so far I'm the only one of the two of us who's been on every episode of the show. And then January 7th, we are coming back to start what is going to be a 6-week show of Alien 1 through 4, the entire quadrilogy in one show. Then January 21st, we've got Predator, Predator 2, and Predators. And then finally, on February 4th, we're going to be doing the 2 AVP movies. And for those 3 sets, we're going to be joined by my good friend, paranormal author, newspaper columnist, former mayor of Orrick, Missouri, former bartender, Northwest Missouri State University journalism instructor, father, husband, all-around fantastic guy, Jason Offit. And then from there, as we get into February, we're doing The Highlander, and then possibly either something Kevin Napier is going to pick or the Dark Knight trilogy. And, yeah, that's about as far into 20.
All right, I am looking forward to listening to all of those.
Yeah, that's about as far as we can read.
I will stand firmly behind my assertion that Toy Story is the best trilogy on film, and I grew up with Back to the Future.
Oh, God, Back to the Future. One great movie, one close to as good as the first sequel, and a third movie that was good, but not up to the caliber of the other 2, but still a pretty satisfying.
I just enjoy 3 by and large because they're in the Old West.
You know what? It's 3 movies that never really at any point in the trilogy, we can't really say that it ever went patently wrong.
Nope. And again, I will hold all 3 Toy Story movies up against either set of any 3 Star Wars movies. You can rearrange them however you want. And I absolutely feel it's better than the Lord of the Rings trilogy as well. So I'm looking forward to hearing you guys talk about that.
And I say this as somebody who is very devoted to the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I would agree with you.
Anyway, I love the Lord of the Rings trilogy as well. It's just that's the regard that I hold Toy Story in. And I feel bad for you having to watch the 3rd Santa Claus movie.
The first one was pretty good. The first one was
a staple of my holiday viewing for a long time.
Yeah, it was a pretty fun little Disney movie. And I'm not a big Disney guy, but that was back when they could still get a live action right. So
yeah, so I am looking forward to all of those. Again, I'm sorry you have to watch the 3rd one.
You know what?
You made it through Hellraiser Revelations. You can go through anything. Twice.
There you go. Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
So you have all of those fun things to look forward to in the Radulich Broadcasting Network. We also have the Casual Heroes, the Rated R Republican for the Right Hook on From the Right Radio, the Metal Hammer of Doom, which was briefly discussed here, which is, if you're a metalhead, and there are subgenres of metal that I'm a pretty big fan of, so that tends to be stuff I listen to. You have this show, lots of good stuff in the Radulich Broadcasting Network. We're on Blog Talk, we're on iTunes, we're everywhere, folks. We're taking over. Thankfully, I am not wearing cutoffs when I said that.
Good grief. One of these days we might end up being the next that guy with the glasses at the rate we're gathering shows.
One can only hope. All right, that's going to do it for this one. Again, next week, come back, Freddy Krueger. Will be awesome, just because Freddy's such an awesome character. He's the anti-slasher, folks, especially when compared with Jason and Michael. But that's my quick preview for next week, so we'll see you then. And here to bid us farewell, as always, we've got Tony Montana. I'll see you next week.
So say good night to the bad guy.